On my birthday, my son gave me a bottle of whiskey and said with a smile, "Just don't choke on it." I smiled back. But in the evening, my grandson wrote, "Grandpa, don't drink the whiskey my dad gave you. He told me the terrible truth." 2 days later, my son arrived and I poured him the same whiskey. What happened to him next shocked me to the core. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The photo slipped from my trembling fingers and fluttered to the patio table like a wounded bird. There we were, frozen in time. Michael at 12, gap-toothed and grinning, his arms slung around my shoulders after we'd built his treehouse together. My hands weren't shaking from age. They were shaking from the memory of our last conversation 4 months ago, when he'd looked at me with those same eyes and asked when I planned to stop hoarding everything. I steadied my grip on the frame and set it carefully next to the stack of plates. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, July 4th, and I'd been out here for half an hour, arranging everything just right. The patio furniture gleamed under the Texas sun, each chair positioned exactly where Mary would have wanted them. I'd even brought out her good china, the set with the tiny blue flowers she'd saved for special occasions. The grill hissed to life on my third attempt, flames dancing blue and orange beneath the grate. 35 years as an engineer, and I still felt that small satisfaction when mechanical things worked as intended. The charcoal would need 20 minutes to reach proper temperature. I checked my phone again. No messages. Not even a happy birthday. Dad text from Michael. Back in March, he'd cornered me in the kitchen after Easter dinner. "You can't take it with you," he'd said, gesturing around the house like it was some kind of prison. "Emily and I have been talking. We think it's time to discuss your arrangements." His voice had that careful tone people use when they think you're losing your mind. When I'd mentioned keeping the house until I was good and ready to leave it, his jaw had tightened in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of his mother when she was angry. The bourbon glasses caught the light as I arranged them on the outdoor bar cart, real crystal, the kind that rings like a bell when you tap it. I'd been saving these for a special toast. Maybe when Michael and I finally worked through whatever was eating at him. Today felt like the right day for new beginnings. My phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart lifted, but it was just a spam call about extended car warranties. I let it ring through to voicemail and went back to adjusting the napkin holder for the third time. The red, white, and blue napkins Mary had bought last summer were still crisp in their packaging. She'd been so excited about hosting the 4th of July. "Next year," she'd said from her hospital bed, "we'll make it really special." The outdoor speakers crackled when I tested them, then filled the backyard with soft jazz. Neighbors were already firing up their own grills. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid drifted over the fence, mixing with the sweet scent of Mrs. Henderson's roses. Normal people having normal family gatherings, probably without sons who made their retirement sound like a selfish act. I walked back to the table and picked up another photo. This one from Michael's college graduation. Whitney stood beside him in a yellow dress, pregnant with Ryan and glowing. I'd been so proud that day, watching my son accept his computer science degree, knowing he'd landed that job at Allstate right out of school. When had things gotten so complicated between us? The ice clinked against the pitcher as I filled it with sweet tea. Mary's recipe with just enough lemon to cut the sugar. Michael used to beg for this tea during summer visits when he was little, before college and marriage and mortgages turned him into someone who calculated the value of everything, including his old man's life. My watch read 3:20. They'd be here soon. Emily first. Probably. Then Michael with Whitney and Ryan. I straightened my shirt. a crisp blue button-down Mary had bought me for Father's Day 2 years ago. The fabric still smelled faintly of her perfume, or maybe that was just wishful thinking. The backyard looked perfect, festive, but not overdone, welcoming, but not desperate. Today was going to be different. Today we'd find our way back to each other. I'd make sure of it. A car door slammed somewhere out front, and my pulse quickened. I checked my watch again. 3:25. Someone was early. I walked toward the side gate, smoothing down my shirt one more time and thinking, here we go. The gate latch clicked under my palm just as Emily stepped out of her Honda Accord. Her teacher's bag slung over one shoulder and a wrapped gift tucked under her arm. Relief flooded through me. Not Michael yet. Just my daughter with her worried eyes and that soft smile she'd inherited from Mary. Dad, you look good. The backyard setup is perfect. She hugged me tighter than usual, her arms lingering around my shoulders like she was checking to make sure I was still solid. Still here. Sweetheart, you're early. I was hoping it might be Michael. He's coming with Whitney and Ryan around 4:15. She pulled back, studying my face with that teacher's intuition that missed nothing. He texted me 20 minutes ago. We walked toward the patio together, her sandals clicking against the flagstones I'd pressure washed yesterday. The gift bag rustled as she set it on the table. Homemade something. Knowing Emily, she'd been crafting since middle school, turning scraps and imagination into treasures that actually meant something. Iced tea. I reached for the pitcher, grateful to have something to do with my hands. Please. She settled into the chair closest to the house, the one with the best view of the driveway, and immediately started twisting her wedding ring, a habit she'd developed during her divorce proceedings last year. Dad, I need to talk to you about Michael. He's been different lately. The ice cubes clinked against the glass as I poured. Different how we had that discussion about the will. But that's normal for families. It's not just the will. Her voice dropped to that careful tone she used with difficult students. Last week at Mom's grave anniversary, he made strange comments about time running out. I handed her the glass, my own fingers steadier now with company. Honey, you're reading too much into it. Am I? He asked me last month how long people usually live after retirement. What kind of question is that? She took a sip but kept her eyes fixed on mine. And when I mentioned you'd been taking those new blood pressure medications, he got really interested. Wanted to know the dosage, the side effects, whether you ever felt dizzy. The words hit me like cold water. I lowered myself into the opposite chair, the aluminum frame creaking under my weight. Emily, that's just he's concerned about my health. That's good, isn't it? Is it? She leaned forward, her voice urgent but quiet. Last Thursday, I stopped by their house to drop off Ryan's baseball uniform. Michael was on the phone in the garage, and I heard him say something about natural causes, and no one would question it at his age. When he saw me, he hung up immediately and claimed it was a work call about server maintenance. My mouth felt dry despite the sweet tea. Maybe it was work. You know how people talk. Everything's about crashes and failures. She shook her head, twisting that ring faster. Dad, he's been asking weird questions about your daily routine. What time you take your pills. Whether you ever drink alone in the evenings. And then there's the money situation. Money situation. They're in deep. Dad. Whitney let it slip that they're behind on the mortgage, and Ryan needs surgery for his deviated septum. Insurance won't cover all of it. She glanced towards the driveway again, as if Michael might materialize at any moment. I think he's counting on certain things happening sooner rather than later. The jazz music from the speakers suddenly seemed too loud, too cheerful for the weight settling in my chest. I wanted to defend my son, to find rational explanations for everything Emily was describing, but the memory of his face during that Easter argument came flooding back. Not just anger, but calculation, like he was already mentally dividing up the estate. Emily, he's your brother, our family. People say things when they're stressed. Do they say things like, "Dad won't be around forever," in front of their 15-year-old son? Her voice cracked slightly. Ryan told me last week that his dad keeps talking about after Grandpa. Not when Grandpa gets older or someday after, like it's already decided. I stared at the bourbon glasses catching the late afternoon light. Those crystal symbols of hope and reconciliation I'd so carefully arranged. The photo of young Michael seemed to mock me from its place between the salt and pepper shakers. We sat in uncomfortable silence, both of us checking our phones, both of us listening for the sound of car doors. The neighbors' barbecue laughter drifted over the fence. Normal families having normal celebrations without poisonous undercurrents. At 4:10, multiple car doors slammed in quick succession. Emily stiffened in her chair, her knuckles white around the iced tea glass. Ryan's voice carried over the fence. "Grandpa, we're here." She reached across the table and gripped my wrist. "Promise me you'll be careful." "Dad, please," I patted her hand dismissively, though my heart was hammering. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. You worry too much." But as I stood up and straightened my shirt, I caught myself glancing at those bourbon glasses again, wondering if I was being paranoid or just finally paying attention. "Game face on, sweetheart," I said, forcing confidence into my voice I didn't quite feel. Ryan bounded through the gate like a golden retriever puppy, all knees and elbows in genuine joy. "Grandpa, happy birthday. I missed you so much." I caught him in a bear hug, lifting him despite the protest in my lower back. At 15, he was getting too big for this. But he laughed and squeezed tight anyway. This was real, the love in his voice, the warmth of his embrace. Whatever darkness Emily imagined, it hadn't touched Ryan. "There's my favorite grandson. How tall you've gotten. I'm your only grandson." He grinned, the same lopsided smile Michael had worn at that age. Whitney appeared next, carrying 2 covered casserole dishes and wearing a sundress that made her look younger than her 43 years. "Happy birthday, Spencer. I brought your favorite potato salad and that corn casserole you always ask for." "You didn't need to go to such trouble, dear." I kissed her cheek, breathing in her familiar vanilla perfume. Whitney had always been the steady one, the peacemaker who smoothed over family tensions with homemade food and genuine kindness. Then Michael emerged from behind the BMW, moving with careful deliberation. He carried an elegantly wrapped bottle, the kind of presentation that screamed expensive. His smile was perfectly calibrated, warm enough to seem genuine, but his eyes remained flat, calculating. "So, happy birthday, Dad." He approached like he was walking through a minefield, each step measured. "I got you something special." The bottle felt heavier than I'd expected when he placed it in my hands. Premium wrapping paper, silk ribbon, the works. Through the tissue, I could make out the distinctive shape of a whiskey bottle. "You didn't need to." Glenfiddich 20-year. The good stuff. His voice carried that forced enthusiasm people use when they're trying too hard to sound generous. "Cost me a fortune. But hey, You only turned 70 once. Right, I stared at the bottle, its weight suddenly ominous in my palms. 20-year Glenfiddich. I knew enough about whiskey to recognize we were talking about a $500 bottle, maybe more. The kind of gift that was either genuinely generous or expensively calculated. This is very generous, son. The words felt thick in my mouth. Michael stepped closer, ostensibly to admire the bottle in my hands. His voice dropped to barely a whisper meant only for my ears. Don't choke on it. The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked up sharply, but his face was already composed in that practiced smile, and he was speaking at normal volume again. You deserve the best, Dad. Enjoy every drop. The emphasis on every drop sent ice through my veins. I caught Emily watching from the table, her face pale with concern, though she couldn't have heard what I just heard. Well, Whitney clapped her hands together, oblivious to the undercurrent. Should we get this food set out? I'm starving. And I bet Ryan is about to eat his own arm. Everyone began moving toward the table, the moment of horror dissolving into normal family logistics. Ryan grabbed plates while Whitney uncovered dishes, filling the air with the scent of mayonnaise and fresh corn. Emily helped arrange serving spoons, shooting worried glances between Michael and me. I placed the whiskey bottle in the center of the table like a centerpiece, its elegant wrapping catching the dappled sunlight filtering through the oak leaves. Michael watched me position it, satisfaction flickering across his features so briefly I almost missed it. Can we eat now? Grandpa, I'm starving. Ryan had inherited his mother's practical nature, focused on immediate needs rather than adult complexities. Whitney started passing dishes around the table, chattering about Ryan's baseball season and her garden club's latest project. Normal conversation, normal family dynamics, while that whiskey bottle sat between us like a beautiful, expensive threat. I forced myself to smile, to nod at appropriate moments, to ask Ryan about his summer reading list. But Michael's whispered words echoed in my mind. Don't choke on it. Not I hope you enjoy it or happy birthday. A warning or a promise. Let's celebrate, I said aloud, raising my iced tea glass in a toast. Inside my head, a different voice added. And figure out what the hell just happened. The knife sliced through grilled chicken with surgical precision, but my hands betrayed me with the slightest tremor. Ryan held his plate eagerly beneath the carving board, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults, like static electricity. Grandpa, this smells incredible. I'm starving. His enthusiasm was genuine, infectious. Everything I'd hoped this evening would be. Only the best for my birthday dinner. Buddy. I placed the largest piece on his plate, the meat still steaming. The whiskey bottle sat in the center of our table like an elegant monument to whatever game Michael was playing. Whitney passed dishes with practiced efficiency, her cheerful chatter filling the spaces where conversation should have flowed naturally. The potato salad turned out perfect. Don't you think I used your mother's recipe? Spencer added just a touch more mustard like she always did. She would have loved that attention to detail. I meant it, though. Mary would have also noticed the frost settling over her son's face every time someone spoke to him directly. Ryan dove into his meal with teenage appetite, talking between bites about baseball practice and summer reading assignments. His animated gestures reminded me of Michael at that age, back when my son's eyes still lit up when he saw me coming home from work. Michael, do you remember when we built your first birdhouse? I tried, desperate to crack through his wall of indifference. You were maybe 8 years old, so determined to get every angle perfect. He looked up from his plate for the first time since we'd sat down. That was a long time ago. Dad, You were so proud when the first cardinal moved in that spring. You sat by the kitchen window for hours, waiting to see if they'd stay. I could picture him clearly. Small hands pressed against the glass, breath fogging the pain with excitement. Things change. He returned to cutting his food with mechanical precision, each movement deliberate and cold. Emily jumped in quickly, sensing the conversation's dangerous trajectory. Ryan, tell Grandpa about your science project. The one about renewable energy. But Ryan had different ideas. Grandpa, tell us about that time the bridge almost collapsed. Mom never gets the engineering details right. I tell it perfectly fine. Thank you very much, Emily protested, grateful for the topic change. But Grandpa tells it better with all the technical stuff that makes it exciting. Ryan's eyes shone with genuine interest, the kind of attention that made old stories worth repeating. I leaned back in my chair, feeling more solid with my grandson's enthusiasm anchoring me. Well, it was 1997, and we were inspecting the Johnson Creek Bridge after that terrible storm in March. The story unfolded naturally. Steel fatigue calculations, emergency load redistributions, the race against time to reinforce critical joints before the morning rush hour. Ryan hung on every word, asking questions about beam specifications and safety margins that showed he'd inherited some of the family engineering instincts. Michael checked his phone twice during my account. His disinterest so pointed, it felt deliberately cruel. Whitney listened politely while serving seconds, and Emily encouraged me with nods and follow-up questions. But I could see her watching Michael's face, cataloging his coldness for later analysis. So, you basically saved hundreds of people. Ryan's voice carried that adolescent awe that made me remember why I'd loved my work so much. I did my job, kiddo. That's what engineers do. We solve problems before they become disasters. I caught Michael's sharp look at those words, something flickering behind his eyes that made my stomach tighten. The sun had shifted lower, casting longer shadows across our table. The whiskey bottle caught the light differently now, its crystal surface throwing fractured rainbows onto the white tablecloth. Beautiful and somehow ominous, like everything else about this birthday that wasn't going according to plan. Can I have some of that special whiskey? Grandpa, just a tiny sip for your birthday. Ryan's innocent question hit the table like a dropped glass. I reached toward the bottle automatically, then caught Michael's sharp, predatory look and froze mid-motion. Maybe when you're older. Buddy. The words came out strained, uncertain. Michael's expression relaxed slightly, satisfaction replacing alert tension. Emily stood abruptly, gathering empty plates with sudden efficiency. Well, this was lovely, but we should probably— You don't need to clean up, honey, I protested weakly. But Emily was already in motion, stacking plates with the methodical purpose of someone who needed busy work to process complicated emotions. It's no trouble, Dad. She balanced 3 plates in one hand while reaching for serving spoons with the other. Besides, many hands make light work. Ryan groaned dramatically from his chair. Do we have to leave already? I don't want to go yet. Can I sleep over, please? Grandpa. The hope in his voice nearly broke my heart. Next time, buddy. Maybe next weekend if your parents say yes. I ruffled his hair, memorizing the feel of it beneath my palm. I'll even make those chocolate chip pancakes you love. Promise? I'll bring my sleeping bag and we can watch old movies. His excitement was a bright spot in an evening that had grown increasingly hollow. Promise, the word felt heavier than it should have, weighted with uncertainty I couldn't quite name. Whitney moved efficiently around the table, gathering her empty casserole dishes and wrapping leftover cake in aluminum foil. "Spencer, thank you for such a wonderful evening. The grilling was masterful, and that corn salad was perfect with the chicken. It was nothing special, just family time." But even as I said it, I knew it had been something special, just not in the way I'd hoped. Special in its revelation of how far apart we'd all drifted, how much careful choreography it took to maintain even the pretense of closeness. We moved in a familiar dance toward the front yard, everyone carrying something, leftover food, gift bags, the remnants of celebration. Ryan dragged his feet, still pleading his case for an extended visit, while the adults gathered jackets and keys with the practiced efficiency of people eager to escape. The evening air felt cooler on the front lawn, filled with the distant sound of fireworks beginning in other neighborhoods. Whitney loaded her dishes into the BMW's trunk, while Ryan climbed reluctantly into the back seat, still waving at me through the rear window. "Thanks for dinner, Dad." Michael's voice carried no warmth, just obligation fulfilled. He extended his hand for a shake instead of the hug I'd instinctively moved toward. "We'll see you soon." His palm was dry, the grip perfunctory and brief. "Son, I hope we can talk more next time. Really talk. I mean, about everything." "Sure. Whatever." He was already turning toward the driver's seat, eager to put distance between us. Emily lingered, her keys jingling nervously in her hand. "Dad, call me tomorrow." "Okay, just to check in." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Stop worrying about your old man." I forced lightness into my voice, though her concern was starting to feel prophetic rather than paranoid. "I can't help it. That's what daughters do." She hugged me tighter than usual, her face pressed against my shoulder for an extra moment. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you. You know that. I love you too. Baby girl, drive safe." 2 cars pulled away from my curb in succession, Michael's BMW disappearing quickly around the corner without a backward glance, Emily's Honda following more slowly, her hand waving through the driver's window until the darkness swallowed both vehicles. I stood alone in my front yard, porch light casting a yellow circle around my feet, listening to the silence that rushes in after departing family. The evening felt unfinished, like a song that ended on the wrong note. Inside, the kitchen looked like the aftermath of good intentions. Dirty plates waited beside the sink, serving spoons scattered across counters, the whiskey bottle sitting prominently where I'd left it. The elegant packaging seemed to mock me now. All that expensive presentation for what a dinner that revealed more fractures than it healed. I picked up the bottle, hefting its weight, studying the label with new attention. Glenfiddich 20-year, the kind of whiskey that costs more than most people spend on groceries in a month. Either an extravagantly generous gift or an expensively calculated one. The crystal felt cold in my hands despite the warm evening. Maybe one glass wouldn't hurt. It was my birthday after all. And if the day had taught me anything, it was that hoping for reconciliation was probably naive. Sometimes a man just needed a drink to wash down disappointment. I reached for a clean glass from the cabinet, then paused as my phone buzzed against the counter. The phone screen lit up with a text notification, and I set down the whiskey glass to read what I assumed would be a belated birthday message from a neighbor or old colleague. Instead, Ryan's name appeared above words that made my blood freeze. "Grandpa, don't drink the whiskey Dad gave you." I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the meaning penetrated. My fingers fumbled as I typed back, "What? Why would you say that?" The response came quickly with the lightning speed only teenagers possessed. I saw him put something in it. Something bad. I wasn't supposed to see, but I did. The kitchen tilted around me. I gripped the counter's edge, my knuckles white against the dark granite. What do you mean, something bad? What did you see exactly? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again as Ryan typed and retyped his response. Finally, he had a little bottle and poured stuff in. Then he shook it up. I asked what he was doing and he got really mad and said, "Never mind." My legs gave out. I sank into the nearest chair, the phone trembling in my hands. The expensive whiskey bottle sat across the kitchen like an accusation, its crystal surface reflecting the overhead lights back at me in fractured pieces. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to type, my thumbs clumsy on the small screen. "Delete these messages right now. Don't let anyone see them." "Already doing it," came Ryan's immediate reply. "Are you okay?" "Grandpa, I was so scared. Scared my 15-year-old grandson had been carrying this knowledge for hours, watching his father give poisoned whiskey to his grandfather, torn between family loyalty and basic human decency. The courage it must have taken to finally send that warning. I'm okay now. Thanks to you. You're a brave boy. This stays between us." I forced steadiness into my words despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "I love you, Grandpa." Those 4 words hit harder than any physical blow. "I love you too, son. More than you know." I set the phone down and stared across the kitchen at Michael's gift. The bottle that had seemed elegant before now looked sinister, its expensive wrapping paper like funeral garb. My son, my own flesh and blood, had tried to poison me on my 70th birthday, in front of his own child. The room felt too small. Suddenly, walls pressing in as the full weight of betrayal settled over me. I moved to the living room, needing space to process what Ryan had revealed. Every detail from dinner took on new meaning. Michael's cold satisfaction when I'd reached for the bottle, his emphasis on enjoy every drop, the way he'd watched my reactions with predatory patience. "Don't choke on it." Not a casual comment, but a promise, a threat, a preview of what he hoped would happen when I drank alone later, when there would be no witnesses to what looked like natural causes at my age. I slumped into Mary's old reading chair, the one with the faded floral upholstery she'd refused to let me replace. The whiskey bottle glowed under the kitchen lights, beautiful and deadly, like everything else about my son that I'd failed to see clearly. How long had he been planning this? Was it just about money, or had his hatred run deeper than I'd realized? And what kind of poison had he used? Something that would mimic a heart attack, probably, or a stroke. Something that would let him play the grieving son at my funeral, while secretly celebrating his inheritance. My phone lay silent beside me. All evidence of Ryan's warning erased. The boy had risked everything to save me, while his father had smiled and shaken my hand after literally handing me death in an expensive package. I whispered to the empty house, "What am I going to do now?" The question hung in the air like incense, heavy and unanswered. My 70th birthday had become the day I learned my son wanted me dead, and the only person who tried to save me was a 15-year-old boy caught in an impossible situation. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting, and walked back to the kitchen. The whiskey bottle seemed to pulse with malevolent energy as I approached it. No longer a gift, but evidence of attempted murder. I picked it up carefully, as if it might explode, and held it up to the light, wondering what deadly substance lay hidden in that amber liquid that had cost my son $500. And whatever remained of his soul, sleep had been impossible. I'd spent the night staring at that whiskey bottle, Ryan's warning echoing in my mind like a prayer I couldn't stop repeating. By 8 a.m., I was dressed and researching forensic laboratories online, my engineering background demanding concrete evidence before I could accept the unthinkable truth about my son. The Texas Forensic Lab occupied a sterile building downtown, all glass and steel, that reminded me of the corporate offices where I'd once presented structural analyses to skeptical clients. I carried the whiskey sample in a sealed mason jar, the amber liquid sloshing gently as I walked through automatic doors into an environment that smelled of antiseptic and determination. "What type of analysis are you requesting?" "Mr. Quill." The technician, a young woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor, didn't seem fazed by a 70-year-old man requesting poison detection on expensive liquor. "I need to know if anything has been added to this whiskey that shouldn't be there." My voice was steady, but my hands trembled slightly as I set the jar on her counter. "Suspected adulteration. We'll run a full toxicology screen. Should have results in about 3 hours." 3 hours. I filled out paperwork with the careful precision I'd once applied to bridge specifications. Every detail documented for what might become legal evidence. Chain of custody forms, contact information, payment processing, the bureaucracy of discovering your son tried to murder you. The waiting room featured uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines I couldn't focus on reading. Coffee sat untouched in a paper cup, while I rehearsed conversations I might need to have depending on what the analysis revealed. Part of me still hoped Ryan had been mistaken, that some innocent explanation would emerge for what he'd witnessed. "Mr. Quill." The technician's voice cut through my circular thinking. "We have your results." I followed her into a small consultation room where computer monitors displayed colorful charts and technical data that meant nothing to me. She settled behind her desk with a manila folder, her expression professional but concerned. "We found a sedative compound in your sample, specifically a benzodiazepine derivative. The concentration is approximately 15 mg per fluid ounce." My chest tightened. How dangerous is that? "In this concentration consumed regularly by someone your age, very serious. We're talking about potential respiratory depression, cardiac irregularities, significant cognitive impairment." She paused, studying my face. "May I ask how you came to suspect contamination? What would happen if someone drank this regularly, say a glass each evening?" I avoided her question, needing medical facts more than I needed to explain family dynamics, gradual onset of symptoms that might be mistaken for natural aging, confusion, dizziness, breathing difficulties. Eventually, she hesitated. "We can't make official medical determinations, but yes, this concentration could be fatal over time, especially for elderly individuals with any underlying health conditions." Fatal. The word hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. My son hadn't just poisoned expensive whiskey. He'd created a weapon designed to kill me slowly while looking like natural causes. "I need official documentation of these findings." My engineering training kicked in. Evidence, documentation, proof that would stand up to scrutiny. She printed a multi-page report on official letterhead complete with chemical analysis charts, concentration measurements, and her professional assessment of the compound's dangers. I read every word twice, my lawyer's future consultation already taking shape in my mind. The drive home passed in a blur of radio music I couldn't hear. The sealed envelope containing laboratory proof sat on my passenger seat like a co-pilot I'd never wanted. Ryan's brave text message had saved my life. But this clinical documentation transformed suspicion into legal reality. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for several minutes, engine ticking as it cooled. staring at that envelope. 45 years of raising Michael. And it had come to this laboratory analysis proving he wanted me dead. Time to remember everything I'd sacrificed for that boy. Time to understand exactly what his betrayal had cost us both. The living room looked like a forensic accountant's office by 3 p.m. Photo albums sprawled across the coffee table alongside manila folders stuffed with receipts, canceled checks, and loan documents I'd preserved with the methodical care of a man who believed family investments mattered. I'd spent 3 hours after returning from the lab systematically gathering evidence of my generosity, pulling files from desk drawers, retrieving boxes from closets, assembling a chronological record of everything I'd given my son over 24 years of unconditional support. The university folder was thickest. University of Texas engineering tuition receipts from 2001 through 2005. Each semester paid in full. Despite the overtime shifts I'd worked to cover costs my salary couldn't absorb. $150,000 in education expenses, documented down to the last textbook reimbursement. I found the photo from Michael's graduation day, both of us grinning in the May sunshine, his cap slightly askew, my face radiating the pride that made every extra hour worthwhile. Summa cum laude, I whispered to the empty room. I was so proud I nearly cried right there in front of everyone. The mortgage documents came next. August 2008, right after the market crash, when first-time buyers couldn't get financing without substantial down payments. $40,000 from my savings account, transferred to help him secure that colonial on Oak Street. The paperwork still bore my signature as co-signer, guaranteeing a loan he described as temporary assistance, just until I get established. "Dad," I said aloud, mimicking his voice from 15 years ago. "I'll pay you back within 2 years. I promise." The promise had evaporated like morning mist, never mentioned again after the house closing celebration. My fingers traced the edges of credit card statements from 2015, the year his first marriage collapsed and left him emotionally shattered and financially devastated. 6 months of mortgage payments I'd covered. While he attended therapy sessions I'd also funded. $20,000 to keep him housed and sane during his darkest period. The professional networking folder was harder to quantify, but perhaps more valuable. Recommendation letters I'd written to former colleagues, phone calls to engineering firms where my reputation carried weight, introductions at professional conferences where handshakes opened doors my son's resume alone couldn't breach. Frank Hartley had hired Michael as a personal favor to me, overlooking his lack of IT management experience because he trusted my judgment about character. The irony tasted bitter now. I'd vouched for a son who was secretly planning my murder. Recent financial rescues filled the last folder. The cryptocurrency disaster from last year when Michael's sure thing investment had cratered, costing him $18,000 he'd borrowed against credit cards, another $10,000 for the failed startup venture he'd begged me to support, promising revolutionary returns that never materialized. I calculated rough totals on my legal pad: education, housing, crisis management, career advancement, recent bailouts, over $250,000 in direct financial support, plus invaluable professional connections and emotional availability whenever he needed guidance or comfort. Every birthday party I'd hosted, every holiday celebration where I played generous patriarch, every grandfather duty performed with genuine love for Ryan. All of it now tainted by the knowledge that my recipient had been measuring my life expectancy and planning my death. The laboratory report sat atop this mountain of evidence like a prosecutorial exhibit, scientific proof that paternal love had been repaid with attempted murder. I arranged the documents in chronological order, building a case that any reasonable person would find compelling. Mary's photo smiled at me from the mantel, her gentle expression seeming to ask how I'd missed the warning signs, how our son had learned to calculate human worth in dollars while accepting unconditional support for decades. I reached for my appointment book from March, flipping to the pages around our inheritance discussion. My finger traced the date, March 15th, 2025. Family meeting discuss will and estate planning. Michael requested urgent discussion. That conversation had been the catalyst, the moment when reasonable family planning had transformed into something darker. I could still see his face across this same living room, the desperation masked as entitlement, the barely concealed anger when I'd refused to alter Mary's carefully planned distribution. That's when this all started, I whispered, opening the appointment book to that exact page. The memory pulled me back to that spring afternoon when I'd still believed my son was capable of patience, honor, and love. March 15th, 2025. The date stared back at me from my appointment book in my own careful handwriting. Family meeting. Discuss will and estate planning. Michael requested urgent discussion. I could almost smell the spring air that had drifted through these same living room windows 4 months ago, when I'd still believed family problems were solvable through conversation and compromise. Michael had arrived 20 minutes early, unusual for someone who typically ran late to family gatherings. He'd worn his good Navy suit, the one Whitney had bought him for company presentations, and carried himself with the formal tension of a man preparing for an important business meeting. Dad, thanks for making time for this. His handshake had been firm but damp, nervous energy radiating through his carefully controlled demeanor. I know estate planning isn't the most comfortable topic. We'd settled into these same chairs, him on the sofa, me in Mary's reading chair where I sat now, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal. For the first 15 minutes, conversation had flowed naturally. Ryan's baseball season, Whitney's garden club activities, his latest projects at work. Then his posture had shifted, shoulders squaring like a soldier preparing for battle. Dad, we need to talk about your will. What about it? Everything's handled through Morrison and Associates. Mary and I set it up properly years ago. I'd been genuinely puzzled, seeing no reason to revisit carefully made plans. That's just it. I think it needs updating. Modern estate planning. You know, tax implications have changed since Mom died. His voice had carried that careful tone people use when approaching subjects they know are sensitive. I should have recognized the manipulation even then. The will splits everything equally between you and Emily. That seemed fair to both your mother and me. But circumstances have changed. Dad, I'm facing some financial challenges right now. Serious challenges. That admission had surprised me. Michael had always projected financial success, driving newer cars than I could afford, taking family vacations that seemed expensive for a middle manager's salary. How serious? What happened to your job security? The job's fine. It's investments, cryptocurrencies, some business ventures that went bad. He'd avoided my eyes, focusing on his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I'm about 50,000 in debt, maybe more. 50,000. The number had hit me like a physical blow, but my parental instincts had immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. Son, we can work through this. There are debt consolidation options. Maybe I can help with some immediate pressure. That's not enough. Dad, I need you to change the will. Give me a larger percentage of the inheritance. His interruption had carried a hardness I'd rarely heard from him. Desperation wrapped in demand rather than request. She doesn't need it like I do. Emily has her teaching pension, her ex-husband's alimony payments, no major debt. She's financially stable. That's not how family inheritance works. Michael, your mother specifically wanted equal treatment. You've always favored her." His voice had risen sharply. Years of perceived slights suddenly boiling over. The perfect daughter with her perfect teaching career. Never asking for help. Never making mistakes. That's not true. And you know it. I've supported both of you equally. Supported Dad. I'm your son. I carry the Quill family name. I should inherit the house. The majority of your assets. The entitlement in his voice had been breathtaking. This wasn't financial desperation. It was calculated selfishness dressed up as family tradition. You'll inherit fairly when the time comes naturally. When will that be, Dad? When you're 9100. His mask had finally slipped completely, revealing something ugly underneath. I'm saying maybe it's time you considered that I need this money now, not in some hypothetical future. The room had gone silent, except for my heartbeat thundering in my ears. My own son had just suggested I was taking too long to die, that my continued existence was financially inconvenient for his immediate needs. Get out. The words had come from somewhere deep and cold inside me. Just get out of my house. He'd left without another word, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle windows. I'd stood in the same living room afterward, wondering where I'd failed as a father, how I'd raised someone capable of such mercenary calculation about his parents' mortality. Present day me closed the appointment book with finality. That argument hadn't been the end of our conflict. It had been the beginning of his murder plot. When reasonable persuasion failed, he'd simply escalated to more direct methods. "This is where it started," I said quietly to the empty house, "and this is where I'll finish it." I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found Morrison and Associates. Time to make some changes to my will, but not the changes Michael had demanded 4 months ago. Morrison and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown Dallas office building. Its mahogany-paneled conference rooms designed to handle the weighty matters of estate planning and family law. I'd climbed these same stairs countless times over 15 years, but never carrying evidence that my son had tried to murder me. Margaret Morrison rose from behind her desk as I entered, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the emergency evening appointment. She'd handled Mary's will, my retirement planning, and now she would help me write Michael out of our family's future. "Spencer, what's so urgent that couldn't wait until Monday?" Her concern was genuine. I'd never requested after-hours legal assistance before. I set the manila envelope on her polished conference table with deliberate precision. "My son tried to poison me. I have proof." Her composure never wavered, though her eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a serious accusation." What kind of proof? The lab report emerged first, its official letterhead catching the lamplight as I spread pages across the table. Texas Forensic Lab. Benzodiazepine derivatives in expensive whiskey Michael gave me for my 70th birthday. Margaret studied the technical analysis with the thoroughness that had made her Dallas's most respected estate attorney. "This shows deliberate adulteration with sedatives. The concentration levels concentrated enough to kill me slowly if I drank it regularly." I laid out the financial documents next. Decades of support. Hundreds of thousands in assistance. A pattern of generosity repaid with attempted murder. "Have you contacted police?" "Not yet. I want to protect my grandson first." Ryan's innocent face flashed through my mind. The boy who'd risked everything to save me. Everything needs to go to him through an irrevocable trust. Margaret leaned back in her leather chair, processing the magnitude of what I was proposing. "That's a significant change from your current will. Are you certain about completely disinheriting Michael? He forfeited his inheritance when he tried to murder his father. The words came out flat, emotionless. Engineering problems required engineering solutions. I want Ryan protected from his parents accessing any funds. We spent the next hour crafting legal architecture that would ensure my grandson's future while punishing my son's betrayal. Irrevocable trust fund, educational expense priorities. Trustee provisions managing disbursements until Ryan reached 25. Margaret's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, translating my protective instincts into legally binding language. The trust will need specific provisions about Ryan's parents being unable to access funds even as his guardians, she explained, pulling up precedent cases on her computer screen. Perfect. Make it bulletproof. The document printing took 20 minutes. I watched each page emerge from her high-end laser printer. Legal terminology that would reshape my family's destiny, appearing in crisp black text. Margaret arranged witnesses from her evening security staff, ensuring every procedural requirement was meticulously fulfilled. My signature felt heavier than usual as I signed the new will documents. Each pen stroke was final, irrevocable, a legal declaration that attempted filicide had consequences. Margaret notarized everything with her official seal, the embossed impressions making my decisions permanent. You could pursue criminal charges for attempted poisoning, she said as we gathered the completed documents. I'm considering it. But Ryan shouldn't suffer for his father's crimes. I accepted my certified copies, evidence that justice would be served through legal channels rather than emotional confrontation. This trust structure protects him completely. Even if something happened to you, Michael and Whitney couldn't touch these funds. The handshake that sealed our business felt like a pact with righteousness itself. I'd transformed my son's betrayal into my grandson's security, turning attempted murder into educational opportunity and financial independence for an innocent 15-year-old boy. Downtown Dallas sparkled in evening darkness as I drove home. Certified copies of my new will resting on the passenger seat, like passengers I'd chosen over blood relatives. At a red light, I pulled out my phone and found Michael's contact information. My thumb hovered over the call button. As I rehearsed the words, "Son, we need to talk about your inheritance. Can you come over tomorrow evening?" The light turned green, and I put the phone down without calling. I'd wait until I was home. This conversation needed to be perfect. Sunday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows as I prepared the most important performance of my 70 years. The phone call to Michael required perfect timing, precise word choices that would intrigue without revealing my hand. I'd slept well the previous night for the first time since Ryan's warning text. Legal protection provided unexpected peace. Knowing my grandson's future was secure allowed me to focus on delivering justice with surgical precision. "Michael, it's Dad. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" His voice carried cautious optimism. "Sure. What's up? I've been thinking about our conversation in March. About the will." I let silence stretch between us, baiting the hook with carefully measured words. "Oh, what about it? I think you might have been right about some things. We should discuss it face to face." The change in his tone was immediate. Excitement barely contained. "Really? You've changed your mind about the inheritance split. Let's just say I've had time to reconsider your perspective on fairness." The lie tasted bitter, but justice required temporary deception. "This sounds promising, Dad. When do you want to meet? Can you come over this evening?" "Around 7. I checked my watch, giving myself 5 hours for meticulous preparation. "Absolutely. Should I bring Whitney and Ryan?" "No. This should be just between us. Father and son business." Ryan needed protection from witnessing what was about to unfold. "Perfect. I'll be there at 7 sharp. The phone call ended with Michael's satisfied chuckle. The sound of a man who believed his patience was finally being rewarded. He had no idea he was walking into a trap designed by someone who'd spent 35 years solving engineering problems through methodical preparation. The poisoned whiskey bottle sat on my kitchen counter like evidence in a murder trial. I poured its deadly contents down the sink drain, watching expensive liquor disappear in an amber spiral that carried away Michael's weapon. Hot soapy water followed, multiple rinses ensuring no trace of sedatives remained in the crystal container. For my own collection, I selected identical whiskey. Same brand, same age statement, same amber color that would fool casual observation. The refilling process required precision, matching the original liquid level exactly so Michael wouldn't suspect the switch. Under different lighting conditions, I tested the bottle's appearance: kitchen fluorescents, living room lamps, natural sunlight through windows. Every angle needed to pass scrutiny from someone who expected his poison to still be there. The living room staging took an hour of careful arrangement. Chairs positioned for face-to-face confrontation. Coffee table centered to hold the whiskey bottle like a centerpiece of deception. I placed the lab report just out of immediate sight, but within easy reach for the dramatic reveal. My rehearsal involved practicing every word, every gesture, every pause that would maximize psychological impact. I'd offer him the whiskey first thing. Watch his eager acceptance of what he believed was still poisoned. Let him drink. Let him panic when I revealed the switch. Then systematically destroy his world with evidence, legal consequences, and permanent banishment. Watch his reaction when he thinks it's still poisoned, I said aloud to my empty house, rehearsing the confrontation like an actor preparing for opening night. The backup evidence, financial documents, photographs, legal papers, waited in strategic locations around the room. Every piece of ammunition for our final battle arranged within arm's reach. At 6:45, I checked my preparations one final time. Whiskey bottle gleaming on the coffee table. Evidence folders strategically placed. Chairs positioned for maximum confrontational impact. Everything perfect for delivering justice to someone who'd tried to serve me death in an expensive package. Car headlights swept across my front window 10 minutes early. Through the glass, I watched Michael get out of his BMW, straightening his suit jacket with the confidence of a man expecting good news about inheritance acceleration. "Perfect," I whispered, my hand reaching for the door handle as my son approached with eager steps toward his own reckoning. Michael approached my front door with the confident stride of a man expecting victory, his briefcase swinging at his side, and his smile already calculating inheritance percentages. I opened the door before he could knock. "Dad, you look good tonight." His surprise seemed genuine. Perhaps he'd expected the poison to show more obvious effects by now. "I feel better than I have in months. Son, come in. Let's talk." He settled into the chair I'd positioned for confrontation, his posture relaxed and eager. The briefcase rested against his leg, probably containing legal documents he hoped I'd sign, transferring wealth from living father to impatient son. "Thanks for calling. Dad, I'm glad you finally want to discuss the inheritance properly." His eyes swept the room, landing on the whiskey bottle centered on my coffee table like a golden trophy. "Oh, we're definitely going to discuss inheritance tonight." I moved toward the bottle with ceremonial precision. "But first, let's have a drink." I opened that lovely whiskey you gave me for my birthday. His face lit up with satisfaction. "That's perfect. It's good whiskey, isn't it? Top shelf quality." I poured 2 glasses with steady hands, the amber liquid catching lamplight like liquid sunset. "Let's find out together." a toast to family. I raised my glass, waiting for him to mirror the gesture. To family. He lifted his whiskey eagerly. No hesitation. No second thoughts about drinking what he believed was still laced with sedatives designed to kill his father slowly. The liquid touched his lips. He swallowed a generous sip, then another, his eyes closing briefly in appreciation of the expensive flavor. When he opened them, I was staring at him with cold intensity. How does it taste the same whiskey you gave me 3 days ago? Something in my tone made him freeze. The glass trembled in his hand as understanding began creeping across his features like dawn breaking over a nightmare landscape. What? He set the glass down abruptly, liquid sloshing. What are you talking about, that whiskey you just drank with such pleasure? The one you doctored with benzodiazepine derivatives before giving it to your 70-year-old father. His face went white. He pressed his hand to his throat, eyes wide with horror. Are you insane? Why would you let me drink? Relax. Son. My voice carried the same cold precision I'd once used to calculate load-bearing requirements for bridges that couldn't afford to fail. This is clean whiskey. I switched it out. Switched. He was on his feet now, backing toward the wall. What do you mean, switched? I reached for the manila folder beside my chair. I know about the sedatives you added. The lab report emerged like evidence in a trial. Texas Forensic Lab confirmed it concentrated enough to kill me slowly while looking like natural causes. That's impossible. He wouldn't tell. Michael stopped, realizing he'd just confessed. Ryan saved my life by warning me. Unlike his father, he still has a conscience. I spread the financial documents across the coffee table between us. 47 years I raised you. $250,000 in support over the decades. This is how you repay me. His face crumpled as the weight of exposure hit him. Dad, I was desperate. The debts, the pressure from creditors. So you decided to murder your father? I stood up slowly, my engineering background making me appreciate the structural collapse happening in my son's world. Murder me and inherit everything immediately, instead of waiting for natural death. It wasn't supposed to be murder, just acceleration. You're 70. People expect what? Expect sons to poison fathers when money gets tight. I pulled out the new will documents. Ryan inherits everything now. Irrevocable trust fund. You get nothing. The color drained completely from his face. What do you mean, everything? The house, your savings. All of it goes to your son, the grandson who saved me from your poison. I walked toward the front door, opening it wide. You have 60 seconds to get out of my house before I call the police with attempted murder charges. He stumbled toward the door like a broken man, then turned back with desperate eyes. Dad, please. You stopped being my son the day you tried to kill me. The door closed with finality that echoed through my quiet house. Through the window, I watched him sit in his BMW for several minutes, head in his hands before finally starting the engine and driving away forever. I returned to the living room and poured myself a small glass of clean whiskey. To Ryan, I said quietly to the empty house, and to Justice. My phone buzzed with a text message. Ryan's name appeared above simple words that made me smile genuinely for the first time in months. Love you, Grandpa. Justice had been served. Family had been protected. And somewhere in the distance, car tail lights disappeared into the darkness, carrying away the son I'd raised, who'd chosen money over love, murder over patience, betrayal over family. I raised my glass one final time to Mary's photograph on the mantel. She would have been proud of how this ended, not with violence or hatred, but with protection for innocence and consequences for betrayal. The whiskey tasted like resolution. If you enjoyed this tale of betrayal and justice, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories. Share your impressions in the comments below. What shocked you most about Michael's plot or Spencer's clever revenge? Feel free to ask questions. Let's exchange ideas and dive deeper into the twists. Interact with the channel. Your thoughts keep the conversation alive. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.